Hey manifestors, welcome back to the channel. Today, I've done a few videos talking about legal terminology, like legal terms that is important to know. And so today I wanted to make a video making sure that everyone knows when is the best time to use that legal jargon versus when is the most harmful time to use that jargon. So I've had people call me, talk to me, or just speaking to me, whatever, and I hear people I hear like non-lawyers using legal terms that either they've heard from the channel, like I've talked about them on the channel, or clearly these folks have learned legal terms somewhere else, usually AI. And yeah, and it makes me realize there's a time to use legal jargon and there's a time not to, especially for clients who are seeking an attorney. If you are in the process, if you've faced some kind of legal wrong and you're in the process of trying to find an attorney, using legal terminology when you're talking to the attorney about the violations you faced can be incredibly helpful, right? Because attorneys will hear those buzzwords and they'll be like, ooh, okay, great. This person has a small, at least like a basic, a little bit of an understanding of like what we would want to be talking about and like what the legal issues are here. And also those buzzwords will trigger attorneys to be like, oh my gosh, these are things that like I would want to talk about. Great. Okay, cool. Like that happened. This was established. They experienced a harm, for example. But I have heard it used in ways that it's not helpful or that's like indicating to me as an attorney that again, you're getting internet terms or like you're using terms that you've learned from the internet, not necessarily terms that you've like deeply researched or deeply understand. And so then that can turn problematic. Another way that using legal jargon can turn problematic is if you are in like a deposition setting or a mediation setting, or if you're in any kind of like interrogation setting where you're being questioned and then you respond trying to use like legal jargon or terminology, that can be incredibly harmful. If you use legal terminology incorrectly, it will make you lose a lot of credibility. And so much of our professional personas and legal personas are built off of the credibility that we have established, whether that's with the judge, with the jury, with opposing counsel, with our own client, but it's all about credibility and keeping and maintaining your credibility. And so using terms that you don't know well or using terms wrong could deeply, deeply damage that credibility. And it's really, really hard, right? Like it takes 2 seconds to obliterate trust and it takes a lifetime to rebuild it. That's the same thing for your credibility, your professional credibility. It can take years and years and years to build, and then 2 seconds of saying the wrong thing in front of the wrong person to obliterate all of that credibility that you've built up. So, using legal terms when, again, you're in the comfort and privacy of talking to your own attorney or even potential attorney, that's great. That's helpful. They can even, and typically will, if they're great attorneys, will point you in the right direction of like, yes, I heard that. Great, great job, great use. Or like, you said that, and I'm not quite sure what you meant by it. I think you may have meant this. Is that correct? We may not tell you straight up, like, you just said something wrong, or I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but we'll like politely guide you in the direction of like, what was that? So listen to those cues, listen for those cues, but using things like when you're speaking to an attorney and about work-related violations, for example, if you say something like, yeah, and then like I felt like I faced adverse action when they terminated me, or it felt like adverse action when they blank, or you can say it felt like retaliation when I was taken off of this project or transferred or whatever it was that felt like retaliation. You can say it feels like X and then like use the legal language, or you can say I think it was X and you can use that language, that terminology with your attorney, and that's all great. That's gravy. That's the cheese on top. That's instead of the cherry or the cherry if you prefer. Like that's all good. But law in general, it can be a very, very like nuanced field. Sometimes a rule of law will hang on like a single word or a definition, a specific definition of a word that like in, Merriam dictionary, it doesn't matter or it doesn't appear. But in a legal context, that's the only way we use that word. For example, residence. If you are a resident of some place, what that means in everyday language, it's like where you live, right? That's where you reside, that's where you're a resident. In legal terminology, where you're a resident is established by multiple factors. It's established by where you get your mail. It's established by where you pay taxes. It's established by where you intend to live for the foreseeable future. It's established by where you're registered to vote. It's established by where you have your license. It's established by multiple factors. It's not just where you reside, where you live, because people can live multiple places, right? Like people have multiple homes. In my opinion, it shouldn't exist, but until everyone has a home, I don't see why multiple people have multiple homes. But, this isn't like snack time rules. So I guess it's not necessary. We don't apply that, like, you can't have seconds until everyone get first rule with housing. But that's a sidetrack. Residence is though like a term of art in legal language, and in everyday language, it's not. And so using that term incorrectly could like completely ruin your claims, make your whole lawsuit dead in the water, or it could completely help it and change the even where you file your lawsuit, depending on how you use the term and understand residence. Employee is another term. Employee in general, like society, citizens, how we use the term employee, it can be very loose, it can be very broad, and you can just mean employee to symbolize like someone who works for X. I work for them, I'm an employee of them, I'm employed by them. In legal, employee is very, very specific, and it's different from a contractor. Very, very different, very different sets of laws, sets of protections, rights, everything, very different. So in law, we're going to be really, really careful about when we talk about someone as an employee versus as a contractor. But again, in everyday society, it's not that big of a deal if I say employee versus contractor. It's not going to like make someone get a job or not get a job, for example. So in law, language can be really, really dicey, and it can be incredibly nuanced, and the rules of law can like flip on a dime. It can flip on a word, it can flip on a term, and also, even if it's not flipping on a word or a term, they can just be incredibly, incredibly nuanced. There are certain laws, there are plenty of laws that apply to each case individually. And so how that law applies will be looked at within the context of whatever case we are applying that rule to or using that rule for. So it's just like a very nuanced, very detailed field. And sometimes certain details won't necessarily matter. And then there are other times where certain details or certain words make a huge deal. The language you use, the words you use, whether you're using legal terminology or not using legal terminology, or you're using words that you don't know have special meanings in law or have like heavier meanings in law, it can really alter your case. So I just want to caution folks, when you're on the witness stand, when you're being deposed, when you're in a mediation session, these are not the times when you're getting evaluated by a medical examiner or a psychiatrist or anything, like these are not the times to throw out the legal jargon and the legal terms that you hear here on the podcast, or out in the world, or through your independent research, or while you're in your conversations with AI, which I hope you're not having, but it's not the time. It's not the time. It could ruin your case. When is the time that you can use this legal jargon is in conversations with your attorney, when you're preparing for hearings or depositions or anything that you would have to do that you're preparing with your attorney for. If you are venting to your friends or your loved ones, like that's a great time to use it, those legal words. If you are researching and you're trying to better understand, those are great times to use that kind of language, those legal terms. Anytime that you are like not officially on the record, those are great times to use those legal words and to like practice it out, see how your understanding is going and see if you're applying them and using those terms correctly. The times to not use legal jargon is when you are under the record, on the record in any kind of way, an interview, a deposition, a hearing, during trial, like any of those times, it's not the time. Perhaps when you're first talking to an attorney to try to get your case heard and try to get an attorney when you're interviewing, it's probably not the time to be starting to talk about like quid pro quo harassment or hostile work environment harassment, or they can't do this because it was protected activity, adverse activity. It's not the time in those first conversations to kind of use those terms, because if you're using a lot of like legal terms in those initial conversations, it can come off, even if incorrectly, it can come off as if you're using the internet, you're using AI, you're reading off of some kind of script, or you're reading off of something that you've seen, but not necessarily that you're speaking from like your heart and your soul. And the number one job of a client is to not be the attorney. The number one job of a client is to be like true and authentic and honest and vulnerable, which that's like all of those adjectives are really hard to be. That's really hard to show up as your true, authentic, natural, honest self in front of like strangers in suits who you don't know, who are asking you questions, trying to trip you up. It can be very difficult to just show up, be yourself, be honest, don't lie. That's a task and a half in and of itself. The job of the client is not to show up and be the lawyer. The job of the client is not to argue for the lawyer. The job of the client is to whisper to your lawyer or write them a little note if they've gotten something wrong or if they've missed something crucial. But it's not to take over the lawyer's job and argue for them. It's not to tell the lawyer what to do. It's not to use the words of a lawyer or show them that you know what you're talking about. It's just to be honest and authentic and allow people in. It's to be vulnerable so that you can show your human experience so that other humans can connect with that and help you recover accordingly. I think I've said this in the other videos, but I'll say it until likely until I'm dead at this point. Just be yourself. You don't need to show off your knowledge, your skills, your understanding of the law. That's the attorney's job. Do that in private conversation. Okay, I think I'm just repeating myself at this point, and hopefully y'all are getting the message. But if you have any questions, please let me know if this inspired any thoughts or ideas, or again, like things more that you want to talk about and we could open this conversation up. Please let me know, drop a comment. Let me know if you would like more privacy. You can send me a personal message, a direct message on any of our social media platforms. But let me know. I will make a video and I will respond to that, or I will make another video further elaborating, and we can open this up and we can talk about this topic all day and all night if you'd like to. If you found this video was helpful, I would like to know that as well. Leave me a like, a heart, a comment, show some love, give me a share, tell your friends. I think that's all I have for you today. Hopefully this video was informative, it was empowering, and at the end of the day, hopefully it helps you get paid. That's my ultimate wish for all of you, and have a good day. Okay, bye y'all.